Hello everybody, welcome to episode 3 of the Digital Marketing Punkcast. Today on the show I have my very first guest and I am very excited about it. I have invited Josh Jackson onto the show today to talk about branding. Now, Josh knows a lot about this, otherwise I wouldn't have invited him on. He works for a digital agency in Chester called eJigsaw and he is the lead designer. Why are we talking about branding? Well, it's very, very simple. Usually, when businesses first start out, the first thing they start to think of is how their branding is going to look and how it's going to work. And most people think, oh, well, branding, it's just my logo. It's just how everything's sort of going to look. But is it more important than that? And that's what I really wanted to get, sort of dig into the details with Josh. What is the importance of branding? What should we be thinking about before we go into the branding of a business process? And I wanted to get some hints, some tips, some thoughts, some ideas from him to help you understand how you can look into branding your business. And really, I'll be honest, I went into this conversation hoping that he would come out with a whole load of tips on how you can build the brand yourself, but he made a very good point, and that is, if you're going to do this, this is the persona, this is the image of your business, and why would you ever skimp out on that? If you're going to do it, you need to do it properly, and that is to get some kind of professional, and we talk about the different types and levels of professional that there are that will be able to do this thing, but some type of professional to come in and to discuss your business, your audience, your requirements, your specification with them in order for them to come up with a brand. I wanted to clear the air a little bit about what the actual deliverables of a brand is. What should people be expected to come out with if someone's gone away and created a brand for them? Is that just a logo? Is that a logo and a color palette? Is that logo, a color palette and some fonts? Or is it more than that? Is it a message? Is it something about the persona and the voice that you want to project on all your digital platforms? That's what I wanted to talk to Josh about, and I wanted to get into some examples of how branding has worked well, what he's worked on, his experience with branding. So that is what we're talking about today, all about branding. I hope you find it very, very interesting. I hope you pick up a lot from it. I know I did when I spoke to him. So let's get into it. This is Josh from eJigsaw talking about branding. So here with me now we have Josh Jackson. Josh, introduce yourself. What do you do? What's your line of work, and what do you get up to on a day-to-day basis, 9 to 5?
I'm Josh, like you said. I work as a lead designer at eJigsaw, which is an agency based in Chester, just near Cheshire Oaks, and I sort of work kind of in all areas of the business. I sort of work quite closely with the business development team on making the tenders sort of make sure they look as good as they can do, making sure that when we're pitching to clients we're putting across like our best side. I sort of work within my design team, sort of make sure that they sort of know what they're doing for the day, and importantly make sure they're happy with what they're doing and happy with their outcomes. We sort of advise each other, like I give them advice which is hopefully all right, and I sort of definitely ask for it too, and they definitely give it. And yeah, just sort of that's day to day really. Also, I suppose, actually, I guess on the subject of branding, I sort of do my best to try and make sure that everyone, for pretty much the entire Jigsaw group, not just eJigsaw, is sort of towing the line and making sure that we look as good as we can from a branding perspective.
And that's not just for eJigsaw as well, and the other jigsaw companies. I suppose that's for your other clients as well, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we've got like a lot of clients that we work for. We build their logos from the ground up, and again into their websites and stuff. So, and that leads on to print as well. So it's a case of making sure that everything we do for our clients is consistent from from a simple logo to an entire sort of fully developed website to a print marketing campaign or social media as well. Everything we do for that as well.
Cool. So, okay, I'm going to go a really top level question, I suppose, and that is, what is branding? But, people will know branding as, I suppose, logos and those sort of visual element, but on a top level, very high sort of level thinking, what is branding?
I think there's two perspectives on it, because I think there's a graphic designer's perspective of it, which is sort of, it's like a graphic designer's speciality is sort of logo design is obviously the start of branding potentially, but like that's kind of the pièce de resistance. Obviously, I can't say that with an accent, but
tried your best.
Yeah. But the whole idea of branding is kind of what identifies a graphic designer, and is sort of like I would imagine kind of what started a graphic designer's life when it first started way back when. And I think that's from a graphic designer's perspective, whereas from a business perspective, it's the face of your company. It's how you want to be interpreted. It'll have a massive effect on that. It's not just your logo. It's the fonts that you use, the images that you use, the colors that you use, and even like the tone of voice that you use as well. So, if we're designing a brand, then it has to, for say a funeral home, as dire as that may be, it has to sort of fit the appropriate tone. So you don't want to be using like big, vibrant, bold colors and firework imagery and things like that. You want to be using sort of sensitive, sort of probably more like serif fonts and sort of slightly nulled down colors, and it's about how you approach your audience as well, I'd say.
So for someone thinking of creating a brand for their business, and they may be starting out, or perhaps they're thinking of rebranding a business that they already have. Obviously, it depends a lot on what business, like you just mentioned, what industry it is, and that'll have an effect on the tone and what you end up creating. But what should people be focusing and concentrating on? What is it that what's the process, I suppose, I'm trying to get at, before they even think about, well, this is my logo, or this is the font that I want to use, or this is how I want my website to be styled or to look. What should lead up to that? What should they be thinking about?
Just, you need to know exactly like what your business is doing and who you're trying to reach. I think one thing I've learned is you can't just design a logo and then figure yourself out afterwards. You need to sort of right from the start say, this is who we are. This is the kind of client that we want to be getting. They may be varied or they may be very particular. And I either want like a friendly tone of voice or a very formal tone of voice, or a very serious tone of voice, or something that's sort of, more catered towards young or old people or anything like that. You need to know your target market and audience first, because it's then the sort of, once you've got that nailed down, you would then, as someone who owns a business, I would say you'd go to like a designer or an agency and you'd say, this is my audience, everything that I've just said, I want to do this, I want to sell it to these people, and I want to do it with this sort of tone of voice. You take that to an agency and they say, right, well, here's what we'd recommend. And, I'd strongly advise listening to them, because I think people sort of come in sometimes thinking they know the visuals and they know how a logo wants to look and things like that. And, which is fair enough. It's always good to have a good idea, but at the same time, like, you have to sort of be open and listen to the people that do this every day and trust that what they'll do will be right. Obviously, if you've gone to that agency, then they'll have a portfolio of work, so hopefully you should be able to trust in them. So I think first and foremost, it's just a matter of making sure you know what you are before you try and communicate to someone who then has to represent that visually, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make a lot of sense. I think obviously as a digital marketer myself, the branding and the marketing efforts, they're really intertwined. It's the reason we're doing this podcast now, that the two are really closely related. Yeah. So what relationship do you feel that it has between digital marketing and branding? What's the relationship that you have with, the marketing team that you work with? What's the how does that sort of come about? Because you mentioned sort of, tone and things like that. We're not just talking, when we're talking about branding, and you correct me if I'm wrong, we're not just talking about logos and fonts and how things are looked. We're talking about tone and how messages are conveyed across digital platforms or even print platforms and stuff like that. So how do you feel that relationship is?
It's incredibly close, and it needs to be. I think you need to trust the people that you work with, from a designer to a marketer and vice versa. Like if I'm ever trying to sort of write content or come up with like a tagline or something like that, the first thing I'll do is I'll ask the marketing team, and we'll just all say a load of ideas, out loud. They don't have to be good ideas, but it's just good to get them all out of your head and into the air, because they might lead somewhere. There should never be any pretense about what it is that you're saying. Just say, for example, like I'm going with the example of a tagline because that's just what I've got in my head. It's something that we did recently. But if some of the ideas might sound daft in your head, but it's worth getting them out, because then they're the ones that sort of tend to lead somewhere. And also it's about like not feeling silly about your suggestions, which is always a horrible thing. You should never feel silly about what it is that you've got to say. So I think with marketing, when a designer works with a marketer, it's about the right terminology, making sure that when we're typing things in InDesign or Photoshop, that it's formatted correctly, because again, I'm not a content expert by no means, but the marketers generally are much more qualified than I am. So, but hopefully what I do, I'm a visual expert, and I want that to be as right as possible. So I feel no shame in sort of going to the people that know best and asking them their opinion on how things should be.
Yeah, exactly. I think, and I agree with you on every single point of that. To be honest, I think it is a really, really close relationship that you've got to have, and it's something that if someone is going away and thinking of creating and designing their brand, or is going to be speaking to someone about rebranding or creating that brand, all of those considerations have to be taken into account. This is not just how your business looks from the output, from whatever platform it is. It's about how you then convey messages. It's then from the tone of your emails, from I see good examples of this all the time, and certainly marketing platforms which I use and software that I use and things like that. They have really good sort of links between the branding that they use and then having that tone and that persona, I suppose is the word, and charisma that they can put across to their sort of messages, and maybe it's an email marketing campaign or whatever it is. And the two are really closely linked, because you can have that disconnect sometimes between what your branding says about you and then how you want to portray yourself across your marketing efforts. And sometimes that disjointedness can have quite a big effect. Are there any good examples that you can think of, or even good examples that perhaps you've been involved in, of sort of genuinely good branding and genuinely good that thought process that's gone into it?
I mean, I've got an example of when, just going back to when you said there's a disconnect between the voice and then the sort of the company. This is nobody that I worked with. This is more from a customer point of view now. But I had it was to do with my last, where I used to rent, and who organised the bills. And basically there's a company that put it all together. Like you just say, I want to pay for Sky, gas, electricity, whatever, and then they sort of do all the admin, and they just charge you one sort of flat fee at the end of every month. But they constantly messed up, like the bills and what their job was. They constantly messed up. But then we were getting emails which were like really sort of student-y is the best way to describe them. They were like, oh, hey dude, or whatever, sort of that tone of voice, like saying, but then they were like, oh no, look at this, looks like we messed up, sorry guys, and then it's a bit like, that's not really the tone of voice that I want when you're telling me that, I owe you money. Do you know what I mean? So I think what you need to do is, and then I suppose the other side of the coin, a good example of, a brand and the tone of voice, I suppose, thinking off the top of my head, is, I'll go with the classic, I suppose, is always Apple. Like, they're very expensive products, but they definitely speak very pretentiously about things, but kind of, silly words like, the best iPad ever or whatever, the best operating system ever. Like, it's simple, but it sort of conveys the whole ethos of,
yes,
simple products which are simple to use, but then that marketing statement is simple to understand. Like, as obvious as it is, nobody else was saying that sort of before them, that this is our best product ever. No. And like, they say that continually every single year, like every iPhone is the best iPhone ever. And, it works because like, it's just, you remember it and you want to, because it's the best one, you therefore feel inclined or more motivated to want it and want to buy it.
So what do you think are the sort of key deliverables? So this is Digital Marketing Punk. Obviously, people listening to this, they want to think about what they could be doing in order to create their own brand. And, they're starting up. They might not have the monetary resources yet to really kick things off with an agency or anything like that. If they're just starting out, what are the things that they should be coming out with and delivering on? What do they expect? What should they be expected to sort of come out with on that process? Is it a logo? And, how should they go about creating that logo? Should that be done by a professional? Should they be thinking about and looking around for the fonts that they should use and the colors that they should use? And how should they go about sort of doing that in order to get the ball sort of rolling?
I would always say get your branding or your logo done by a professional, because there's people, even if it's a student, not to downplay students, but students out there will want to do branding and want to do logos and things like that, and they will have a much better idea than somebody who thinks they can sort of do it by themselves using Microsoft Paint or something like that. So
don't knock Microsoft Paint, honestly.
I've seen some unbelievable stuff done with Microsoft Paint, and I still hate it. So I think that there are professionals out there, and there are people learning to be professionals out there that want to do branding work and logo work. So you will always find something. I'd always say find someone who you can at least see in the flesh, rather than going to one of these websites where you get a logo for £5, because if you do that, then you'll end up with something that somebody else the next street down will have. Do you know what I mean? It won't
Absolutely.
be very unique. Whereas if you get something done by someone of any level, what you'll end up with will definitely be unique. And I'd definitely say, obviously, make sure you pick someone that you trust, like you would with any investment that you make. But always go to a professional, because that's what they're there for. And, you can go to people who will charge a lot of money. You can go to people, who won't charge a lot of money, and they'll sort of tend to be the more new and fresh sort of students coming out of uni, or maybe they want to do it for a project and things like that. The resources are there for people to use, and they're there in the shape of people and art students and graphic design students and things like that. So I'd strongly advocate like actually using people that you can see and shake hands with.
That's a really good point, actually, and it's something that I would never have thought of, utilizing that student community, those that are learning, obviously they're not probably, they want to have things on their portfolio. They want to get, and I'm sure you were like this in your early days, you just wanted a body of work which you could then show off, because, you know, these are people that want to better their careers, but they need a starting point somewhere. So
yeah, but like I think, you know, students aren't there to be taken advantage of. Like, you know, like don't sort of go to a student and say, here's 20 quid, I want branding, brand guidelines, social media cover photos, and this, that, and the other. You know, you've got what they're doing takes hours and hours and days sometimes, and you know, I think particularly at that level, they're probably got no idea and sort of, I know I definitely didn't, and it's something that I still sort of grapple with every day. But like, when I do something, I won't stop until I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
Which, when there's budgets involved, is hard. So, you know, I will take work home and I'll work on it, you know, when it's not on company time, and just because, like, I imagine many people in my sort of industry and profession I consider myself a perfectionist. Like, I think until I'm like truly happy with something, I'll happily sort of speak to the project manager about kind of, you know, could we push another day or something like that, and you know, if it's no, then it's fine, but if it's yes, then that's great for me. And the students, if they're doing a logo for a bakery or something like that, then they will want it to be as good as it possibly can be, and therefore they will spend evenings, and you know, they'll be up till 3 a.m. or just not sleep at all, making sure that they get it right. So if people just need to not take advantage of students, because that's something that I always like got really annoyed with when I was a student. You know, people expect you to do it for free, and you know, that's just not fair. That's not how the world should work. Like, you know, you should never have to do an internship for free or anything like that, because again, you know, money makes the world go round. So if you're not giving people money, then I don't really see how you can sleep.
No, absolutely. So what you're saying is, you know, obviously they will be there and they can do it, and there's that opportunity, but don't abuse them. You know, don't expect to do it free.
Most importantly, don't abuse them.
That's a message in life, isn't it? I suppose. Yeah.
It's a good all-round rule, that, I find. But yeah, so I think, like, don't go to bloody, you know, Fiverr.com or whatever it's called, like, because you'll just end up with something that someone else has already got, and it won't, like, it'll probably look all right on its own when it's isolated, but there won't be any thought there. Nobody will have actually learned from it, and it won't be anything that you will have had any creative input in, really. It'll be, you know, it'll just be something that you've picked from a page of other logos and icons. Whereas if you work with somebody in the flesh, like, you know, there'll be a little bit of back and forth there. Like, the best work that I've done personally, or the work that I'm most proud of rather, is when I've had a really good relationship with a client and a customer, and they understand how excited we get as an agency and as a team and as an individual designer about designing logos for people, because I love it. I love it when we get the opportunity to do it. So that kind of excitement that you get from interacting with someone will inevitably make the creative process run much more smoothly, and you know, everyone will be behind each other, and you know, you just get a really good, it should be a team really between a designer and a client. They should definitely work together. You can't just pass this brief off to a designer and expect them to create magic. Then, you know, I find it's best when you create like a proper relationship, and I'm not trying to be all sort of cheesy, and you know, that's just genuinely off experience. You know, my last job, we just sort of rang people up and had a really quick chat with customers, and we were expected to create 4 different concepts in, you know, not very much time. Whereas now, it's the way eJigsaw does it is we actually respect our clients and they respect us back, and therefore we get the best out of them.
I suppose that's a really key point, and it sort of circles back. I know of, obviously working in digital marketing and working with clients as well, that I know that some businesses and business owners will not put that value on branding
Well, the value in it is I think it's pretty easy to explain. But again, using the big examples because they work, but that's the value of branding. People buy Nike shoes. People pay the extra 50, 60 quid for a pair of shoes which you could probably get for a fraction of the price from Primark, because of that little tick. Well, it's not a tick, it's a swoosh, apparently.
Is that a technical terminology? Is that the branding terminology?
Yeah, I bet if any designers listen to this, they'll probably slate me off for calling it a tick, but it's a swoosh. Anyway, moving on. The reason you buy those products is because that brand is so strong, and there's no reason that Mr. Joe Bloggs startup can't achieve that level of cool, and if they do it right at the start, then you'll never have to change it. Nike's had that logo since the 70s, I think, and possibly earlier, but it's still definitely like people from all, I'd say, backgrounds and things like that, rich to poor, Nike is like a very good brand to be seen in and to be associated with. Yeah. So, that's the value of branding. It's kind of, for me, it's just not, if you've got a cheap thing banner on top of your shop window, if you've got a shop, that's Comic Sans and all colours of the rainbow and things like that. Like, how did I know
that Comic Sans would come up in this conversation?
Yeah, it's always going to, isn't it? But like, if that is on a high street, it's going to get noticed.
Yeah.
Yes, that is a fair point, but it's not going to be valued. No. And if you create something that people like to own themselves, like a coffee cup with a little green circle on, for example, that's just white, that coffee cup, but that the fact that all I've said is green circle, and you probably know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Shows the power of just that one green circle has. People will go to that coffee shop over another coffee shop because they want to be seen drinking it, and that to be seen drinking that as a customer is then good for the business, so that's where the value comes in, even if the coffee is rubbish. So
that's a personal opinion there by Josh, that the coffee is rubbish. Yes, exactly. Okay, one last question. I really do appreciate this. So, what are your final tips for people when they're thinking about their branding? What are the things that maybe these, because I imagine everything's seasonal as well, and things obviously change with the time, but that's not necessarily true, I suppose, because we just spoke about the Nike swoosh, and that's something that is eternal. That's something that's never really gone in and out of fashion, or has never become something which has become outdated or anything like that. So I suppose, is branding eternal? Is branding supposed to be timeless?
It can be. I don't think it's eternal. No, I think those who do last are the massive companies, and they're very lucky. But I think it's always, you don't have to. Obviously, the longer a logo lasts, then the better you could argue it is. And the more timeless it is, again, is a very good thing. But I think that was the 70s and 80s when it was probably easy to say that. Nowadays, I don't think it's eternal. Yeah. I think it moves so fast, like as everything does. That I think 5 to 10 years well, hopefully at least 10 years is a pretty decent lifespan for a logo. But I think it's so, don't look at what other people are doing with their branding, and this, I'll say this to like designers as well, like don't look at what other people are doing, not just with their branding, like, or with anything. Like, don't look at another designer and think and worry about what they're doing. Do what you, as a business working with a designer, do what feels right and create what looks right for your business in that time. And if it's got the scope to then, if you think it's got the scope to then look that good in 5 years, then there's no reason that it won't look that good in 5 years' time. I think if you want it to last longer, there's the standard sort of rules to follow are, less colour is generally a good thing, as in, have as many different colours if you want, but if you've got one logo, make sure it's just all one colour. I think for me is essential, or is, I've not always stuck to that rule, but I think it helps logos last longer, and also just makes it easier to work with in the future, and more adaptive and things like that.
70s beige is not cool anymore, kids, and it will
no.
Sadly. Sadly, is it going to make a comeback? Is that what you're saying?
I'll do my best.
Obviously, we talked about the Nike swoosh, I suppose, is like you just said, it's one of those examples which is completely off, sort of what's the term that I'm looking for? It's one of those timeless. But we look at modern day brands and suppose more newer, modern, in inverted commas, companies now, and they've all gone through brand changes. Google has gone through a seismic brand change very, very recently. Yeah. Facebook goes through the same brand changes. So this is not something that has to be a case, is it? You can go through brand change, subtle, and sometimes they do it very subtly over many, many years. But you can't. It is possible to go through that brand change.
Yeah, like brand change doesn't always necessarily mean a logo change. Like for example, NatWest, they recently rebranded in the past year, I think. But the logo is still the same. Essentially, it's kind of, I think it's styled a little bit differently. But everything around the logo, i.e. the brand and the tone and things, has changed. And that's a rebrand in terms of the marketing, and like you were saying before, the marketing and design teams have clearly met up, or the agency working for NatWest has clearly met up and sort of had like a good, they've analysed where they were and they've sort of stated where they want to be, and it's obviously clear where they want to be. They want to be modern and bright and on trend and stuff like that. And I reckon that their new brand definitely puts that across. But that's as a result of tone of voice being nailed from the start with the designers as well as the marketers. So the designers know what they're working with. So yeah, I would like, and the thing with Google is, Google's was very much, well, I'd say it was just a logo change. I think the sort of everything else around the brand is fairly similar.
Yeah.
It just definitely needed modernising.
Yeah, there wasn't much to change, I suppose, outside the logo, wasn't it? It was very white and very minimalistic on the whole, and always has been.
Yeah, but I think they needed something that works as an icon, which it definitely does now. I really like Google's rebrand. I think a lot of people, I think it was quite controversial when it first came out, but I think they've nailed it.
Absolutely.
But they've changed the fonts and things as well, and it just looks much more modern. But I think when I say like not a lot else changed, I think like the tone of voice, I haven't noticed if it has changed. It's Google been very friendly. I think their tagline was, I don't know if it still is something like "Don't be evil."
Not anymore, unfortunately. They had to.
Oh, is it not?
No, very, very recently they had to take that out. Due to recent military contracts and stuff like that, they've had to remove.
Due to being evil.
Yes, due to being evil, they've had to remove it and change it now.
Oh well, there we go.
Yeah. One final thing, just before we go, I think we've pretty much established that if you're thinking about branding for your business, then you're in dire need of some kind of professional to work with and be able to establish what that brand is. So what's the one thing that business owners out there should be thinking about before they go and meet with this person and discuss with that person? What's that designer going to want to know? What's that key thing?
Well, motivations for setting up your business? What are they? Who, like I was saying before, your target audience is so important. You don't want to be marketing to 20-year-olds, but then design something that looks like it was made for your gran. You know, you just need to know exactly what it is that you're doing and where you want to be. I think where you want to be is probably the biggest one, to be fair. If you say to a designer, I want to be here in 6 months' time or 6 years' time, I need to sort of know how to get there, then they will do their best to help you. And if you get a good designer and someone that you trust, like, you know, they'll do that for you, and they'll make you something that represents you as clearly as it can do through a visual form. And yeah, I'd say that's it really. I think just know exactly what it is that you want to do and where you want to be. Like, don't expect the designer to give you all the answers for how to run your business and your business model, because God knows about that in the past. Like, I'm not a businessman. I'm not a numbers man. Like, I essentially colour in for a living. Like, I can't help you sort of figure out. You know, I once worked with a client at a previous agency, who wanted to fiddle the sums, so somehow he was, the way the money was going through the business would make him look like he's paying just below the threshold, so he doesn't have to pay more tax or something like that. And
doesn't have to pay VAT.
Sorry?
So he doesn't have to pay VAT.
Yeah, well, essentially, yeah. Like, it's not. Obviously, I wasn't part of that conversation, but I was in the room certainly when it was happening, and I was just sat there like, you know, we shouldn't be figuring this out. Like, this isn't. It's totally immoral and ridiculous, and B, you know, we are web designers, graphic designers, marketers, and things like that. But I think, to be fair, I think the person who was pushing it was an ex-banker, so that probably says it all.
You were not qualified for that conversation.
No, absolutely not, definitely not. But yeah, just don't expect the designer to have all the answers, because they won't. But like, you know, in terms of the visuals and things like that, they'll probably have a bloody good kind of idea of where you should be and how you want to get there.
Excellent. Well, Josh, thank you very much. Just last thing, just tell everybody sort of how they can find you, how they can find your agency, and you know, connect with you. So
we are eJigsaw. We are based in Chester, like I was saying. www.ejigsaw.co.uk. We have a new site launching in the next few months, I think. So that'll be exciting. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm on all of those as well. But I never put anything interesting up, but eJigsaw certainly do. So yeah, we're always sort of looking for clients to work with. Again, there's always career opportunities as well. So we're kind of a really exciting time, because we're only a young agency, but we've worked with big clients in the last sort of year, like Virgin and others locally in the NHS as well. So just look us up.
Anything, obviously you might not be able to name names in terms of clients, but any exciting branding projects that you're working on at the moment that you're looking forward to seeing the light of day, and that are potentially, you know, something that you're proud of?
We currently potentially might have one for a street food vendor soon. We're hoping that sort of comes through the door. That'll be really exciting. It's a client that we've worked with in the past, actually. He was a caterer, and he's setting up a street food vendor thing, and they're just really exciting to work with. Anything food based is always really fun. Also really hard, because you end up looking at pictures of amazing food for hours on end, and you know, then you look in your drawer and all you've got is a banana. So that's not fun.
Well, Josh, thank you so much for joining me and talking about branding. And hopefully, I've certainly learned a lot from this conversation. So hopefully other people have as well. Hopefully I didn't waffle on. I've probably just chatted a load of nonsense. Not at all. There we go. Not at all. Josh, thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much. So That was Josh from eJigsaw talking about branding. I hope you managed to take loads and loads from that. If you want to go and check them out, eJigsaw.com is where you can go and find them, and you can go and find Josh as well if you want to find out more about what he's doing and what he's up to. They are a fantastic digital agency in Chester. Go check them out. So that's it. I hope you found a lot from it. If you want to find out more from me, you can go over to our website, digitalmarketingpunk.co.uk. You can follow me on Twitter, which I believe is digital_punk. You can go on Facebook at Digital Marketing Punk as well, and you can find out all the latest about Digital Marketing Punk, all the other podcasts that are coming out. In the future, I'm hoping to do loads more interviews. So if you do have a story to tell, or you feel you have something to contribute to small-time businesses or startup businesses that are out there that want to really get into the world of digital marketing, if you have a story to tell, then please get in touch with me. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. That's probably the easiest way to get in touch with me if you want to talk about something on the podcast, or if you're in the profession, if you're in the industry, you can get in touch as well. If you think you have something to talk about, SEO, social media, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, conversion rate optimization, whatever it is. I listened to a podcast recently about Facebook Messenger campaigns, which I knew nothing about, but I was fascinated. If you know more about that, then come onto the podcast and let's talk about it, and hopefully people can find some really useful information, hints and tips for them to go out into the big wide world of digital marketing and find out all about it and do it themselves, which is what Digital Marketing Punk is all about, except for today about branding, where we have suggested get a professional in. But well, can't always have it your own well. Okay. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you'll tune in to the next episode of Digital Marketing Punkcast. I will see you very soon.